I want to thank Leslie for putting this conference together, and I'm very pleased to be speaking with you. And I'm just going to press on and hope that you can hear me and understand me.
Go for it.
Between the gut and the brain. We know that because when our stomach hurts, we can't think. And when we're upset, it's hard to digest our food. So that's just, as we say, a gut feeling that we all have. But there's actually quite a bit of science about the gut-brain connection. We know that there's a tremendous number of synapses and nervous pathways that go between the digestive tract and the brain. And even the bacteria in our digestive tracts can send signals along these pathways to our brain. So there's really a lot of truth. There's a lot of truth in the idea that there is a gut-brain connection. More passionately explaining this to us than Natasha Campbell McBride, who I actually met at a Mind conference many years ago. So we're going to talk about the gut, and we're going to talk about the brain. So obviously the first thing we need to talk about is the teeth, right? So we're going to talk about Dr. Weston Price. And as many of you know, Dr. Price carried out these studies on healthy traditional people in the 20s and 30s and 40s. He went all over the world trying to answer the question, how do we achieve good health? And he found many cultures all over the world that were healthy. And one of the ways he knew that they were healthy, and he reasoned that the teeth are a mirror to the rest of the body. And if he could find, and he did find, populations with excellent dental health, then he was confident that they had excellent health overall. And he certainly found these people. He found 14 groups with beautiful facial structure, every member of the tribe or village, and naturally a beautiful straight teeth, and virtually no cavities, no decay, no infection in the mouth. Now, what he observed was that when these people stopped eating their native diets, within one generation, their facial structure changed. And you can see the woman in this picture. But there's a very, and she has crowded and crooked teeth. And this is a sign of not a change in genetics. It is a sign that the diet, when her body was being formed, was not optimal. So why should we care about this? Well, we like to say that the teeth tell the tale. And when the teeth are straight, it is a sign that the entire body has been properly formed with good nutrition. It means there'll be plenty of room in the head for all the major organs of the head, the pituitary, the pineal, and the hypothalamus. And by the way, the hypothalamus is the seat of impulse control. And if there's anything we're seeing today in our children, it is lack of impulse control. The spine, good musculature, all the organs, including the gut. The other thing that he found in these people who showed their good health with their excellent dental structure was they were optimistic, they learned easily, they easily related to one another in their communities. He never found anything that met the description of mental illness or what we call autism today. And finally, when the teeth were straight, it meant that the pelvic opening, the shape of the pelvic opening was round, which meant that childbirth be very easy. And that's, of course, what he found, that childbirth was painless and easy. So that's what happens when the teeth are straight. It means the entire body has been properly and in the early growth years. Now, when the teeth are crooked and crowded, it's a sign that the body has not been properly formed. And the teeth are the part you can see. The part you can't see would be, for example, all the glands in the head, a sign that they may not be properly formed. I should mention here the sinus cavities, the ear tubes, the parts that get so infected in our children, usually time after time. They will be more compromised, they'll be smaller or easily more prone to infection. You tend to see poor development, poor posture, easily injured, poor eyesight and hearing, and then compromised function of all the organs, including the gut. And we'll go back and talk about the formation of the gut and what is needed for the proper formation of the gut. Depression, the behavior problems, the learning problems, which of course we have an epidemic of these today in our society. And finally, the pelvic opening will be more narrow and oval, and this makes childbirth very difficult and painful and very often life-threatening. So these are photographs of typical modern children. Typically, they have very narrow faces. It is unusual today for a child born in a westernized country to have naturally straight teeth. Almost all of them need braces. And of course, they're suffering from an epidemic of problems that we all know about. Everything from frequent infections, eyesight, tonight, or mine tonight. Is problems with digestion, which are endemic, and then problems with the brain, the gut and the brain. The good news is that this can be reversed. Good nutrition can help the children who did not get an optimal start. But when the parents understand these principles and apply them in preparation for pregnancy, during lactation, and during the period of growth, we get these optimally healthy, beautiful babies with broad faces who can digest anything, who have keen minds, who can concentrate very hard. I mean, this is what children who are optimally nourished. There was a lot of variety in all the diets. I mean, he went and looked at the Eskimos, he looked at primitive Swiss villagers, he looked at people living off the coast of Scotland, he looked at people in the South Seas. The diets were very different in their particulars. Some had lots of animal foods, some had almost no animal foods, some had dairy products and some didn't. Many of these cultures have grains, and they were very healthy, the grains. Many did not have grains. So how do we make sense of all this? And what I'm going to go through with you now are looking at the underlying characteristics of these diets, what they all had in common, and the brain. So the first principle, and this is obvious, there were no refined or denatured foods in these diets. There was no sugar, no white flour. This may surprise you. There were no vegetable oils. There was no soybean oil. There was no cooking oil. There was no margarine. There were no spreads. There was no Cool Whip. There was no low-fat sour cream. None of these awful things that pass for food today, these food-like substances made from the seed oils. And I think this is a really key point. People don't realize that these oils are completely new to the human diet. So no canned foods, no condensed milk. That list is a lot longer today. Not only do we have refined sugar, we have something called high fructose corn syrup, which is worse than sugar. And particularly pasteurized milk, skim and low-fat milk. These are not whole foods. They're foods in which critical components have been destroyed by processing or just taken out. And then, of course, the various refined oils. Another one I'm very concerned about is the isolated protein powders. These are not whole foods, and they have particularly damaging effects that can affect both the gut and the brain. And then, of course, all the additives, the artificial sweeteners. This puts a damaged gut. This puts damage on steroids, so to speak. I mean, it just makes everything worse when you are not properly formed to begin with, or the child's gut and brain are not properly formed. So one of Dr. Price's most famous sayings was, "Life in its full." Are suffering from these problems, digestive problems, neurological problems. They are not living life to its fullness. It's very tragic. Many of these lives are very difficult, and we might say wasted talent, wasted lives, wasted intelligence. And I can't stress enough, these are not foods. They don't build the body. They cause neurological problems. They're toxins. And really the first step is getting all these fake foods out of your diet, whether you want to have a healthy child or whether you have a child and you want that child to get well and be healthy. The second principle, and this is a surprising one, it contained animal products. He had hoped to find a healthy population that did not eat animal products. He himself tended to think it might be nice to be vegetarian, but he had to admit that every culture that he did find had animal products in the diet, and not only that, they went to great lengths to obtain these animal products. A lot of risk and danger to obtain the animal products. So they thought these were pretty important in the diet. So fish and shellfish, Dr. Price thought that these were actually the most important animal products in the diet. And they were not just eating the skinless fillets. They ate the livers of the animals. They extracted the oil from the livers. They ate the skin. They ate the heads. They ate the various organs. They ate what they called the maw of the animal, the part of the digestive tract. They were not eating the skinless. They were eating the whole animal, including the organs, the fat, and the skin. And the organ meats were especially prized in these birds. Many cultures ate red meat, and they were perfectly healthy eating red meat. Beef, goat, sheep, game, of course. And again, the organ meats and the fat bird. When the hunting was good, they threw the lean meat away. They thought that was rubbish. The Aboriginal people called the lean part of the meat the rubbish part. And milk and milk products in some cultures, always raw or cultured, never pasteurized, always full fat. Eggs from pasture-raised chickens or birds, any type of bird, of course, outside. And then many cultures ate reptiles and insects. That's not part of our diet, and I'm not telling you. But we do need to recognize that these are very nutritious foods. Now, one of the things that happens when we avoid animal products is that we get B12 deficiency. And you may recognize some of these symptoms in if you're caring for a child with one of these gut-brain disturbances, sleep disorders, tingling in the hands and feet, rages, temper tantrums, easily fatigued. These are very likely signs of B12 deficiency. And I don't have it on this chart, but the digestive orders as well. You know, when you think of digestion, your digestive tract is one long set of muscles moving the food through your body, and those muscles cannot work without B12. Likewise, think of all B12. So B12. Now, one of the things that we're seeing today is the promotion of what I call the puritanical diet. And people want to be virtuous and be on this good diet. And unfortunately, this is exactly the type of diet that has gotten us into so much trouble. So it's the virtuous, plant-based, low-fat, low-salt, high-fiber diet, approved by dietitians. And it just leads to hunger and malnutrition. It's impossible to stay on this type of diet. And so what happens is that people try to follow this diet, try to be good. They develop tremendous cravings. And what happens is and really, neither of these are the right way to eat. What's wrong with something in between, something that's nourishing and delicious and tastes great and satisfying, and that doesn't put us in a state of constant renunciation? And this is what happens when people try to go on the recommended diet today. They feel like it makes them depressed, really. And then, of course, they binge and splurge on the comfort foods, the pornographic foods. Okay, so I think you can see where I'm going. Back to foods that are really nourishing and have FAT in them, that three-letter word that starts with F. Okay, I want to dwell on the third principle the most because this is Dr. Diets were nutrient dense. It's not that they just had the minimum requirement of vitamins and minerals. They had 4 or more times the minerals, the vitamin C, the B vitamins, the B12 that everybody needed. And when it came to the vitamins that you find in animal fats, there were 10 times more of these vitamins. We call them the fat-soluble vitamins. 10 times more in the primitive diet than compared to the modern American diet. And these vitamins are critical for our subject tonight, gut and brain health. So where do we get these vitamins? We'll start, there's actually 3 fat-soluble vitamins, and we're going to start with the 2 that you're most familiar with, which is vitamins A and D. Where do we get them? Well, we get them from certain types. Recently. Do you know that fish eggs are a sacred food in China, and children are fed fish eggs so they'll be good in arithmetic. They're really recognized as a brain food. We get vitamins A and D from fish livers, fish liver oil, fish heads. How many of you have eaten fish heads recently? But the Asians, of course, have fish heads every day with their fish head soup, loaded with vitamin A. Shellfish, oily fish, and in many cases, sea mammals like seals, sea lions, and so forth. But we don't eat those foods, so our sources are more limited. And then from the land animals, insects, right? Except that we don't eat insects. Butter and cream, meats, and animal fats. These are our sources of A and D, and these are the very foods that we are being told are bad for us and we should not eat. The very foods that were considered sacred in traditional cultures and very important for having healthy babies and for fertility and for keeping us healthy. These are the foods that we're being told not to eat. And to make matters worse, even if we do eat these foods sometime, They come from animals raised in confinement, so the levels of the A and D will be much lower than what the body needs to get from these foods. So this is why we're so insistent on pasture feeding. When these animals are in pasture, eating green grass, they'll be wonderful sources of vitamin A. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so let's go back to this slide once more. Sources of vitamins A and D. Really, this is the most. This is the most important slide that I am showing you today, and my take-home message for you, your families, your children. The most important thing you can do for your health is to get as many of these foods in your diet as you can. That means to use a lot of butter and cream in your cooking. The egg yolks are more important than the whites. Eat liver once or twice a week. It's easy if you make chicken liver pate. It's delicious. Eat the fat on the animal foods. Eat the skin of the chicken. Eat the fat on your meat. And as many of these seafoods that you can of what constitutes a healthy diet. So Dr. Price referred to these vitamins as activators because they're needed for using minerals. And of course, we need minerals everywhere in our body. We need, for example, zinc for our brains to work. But the zinc, we cannot use it without vitamins A and D. So, and that could be said for iron. Iron is critical for neurological function. We cannot absorb iron without vitamin A. So Dr. Price said it is possible to starve for minerals that are abundant in the foods eaten because they cannot be utilized without an adequate quantity of the fat-soluble activators. So if we think of the body, let's see, where am I? I'm missing a slide here. If we think of a body as a house or a temple built of bricks and mortar, the minerals, and we need both. So I just want to look at these vitamins in a little more detail. There's a myth about vitamin A, and that's that you can get vitamin A from plant foods. That you can get vitamin A from carrots and tomatoes and leafy green vegetables. And this is just not correct. You can get carotenes from these foods, but it is very difficult for your body to convert these carotenes into the true vitamin A. Certainly not enough vitamin A for what your body needs. And in the case of a child with digestive problems, absorption problems, leaky gut, it is impossible to make vitamin A from plant foods. You need the true vitamin A from the animal foods. Now, vitamin A is critical for numerous you need warn people against, and I know this is going to sound strange, against high protein diets. What happens when you eat a lot of lean meat? Excuse me, a lot of lean meat. Skim milk, egg whites without the yolks, or take a protein powder. In other words, what happens when you eat the way they're telling us to eat today? When that protein comes into your body says, oh, protein, I need vitamin A to use this protein. And it goes to the liver to get the vitamin A stored there. And the quickest way to deplete your body of this critical vitamins, I mean, vitamin A is needed for everything that happens in your body, from synapses in the brain to digestion to vitamin is to eat a high protein, low fat diet, exactly as we are being told to do today. Protein is not the problem in the Western diet. We get plenty of protein, and you really don't need more than 10 to 20% of your calories as protein. The problem in the Western diet is getting enough fat and the right kinds of fats. Vitamin A is critical for calcium assimilation. It's needed for proper growth. Children need more vitamin A than adults as a function of body weight because they're growing. It's needed for the entire endocrine system, for the formation of hormones. It's needed for the thyroid gland to function, for the immune system to function. It's needed for the production of stress hormones. And what are we seeing in these children with all of these gut-brain problems? We're seeing a lot of stress, and just the emotional exchange between one individual and another is a lot of stress for these kids because they simply are lacking enough vitamin A to deal with that challenge, that stress of emotional interaction. It is needed for healthy eyes, skin, and bones, and it is especially important for a well-formed gut. When you think of it, your gut is lined with skin. It's just the skin that's on the inside of you. And you need vitamin A for the formation of healthy skin. And this is a very interesting chart showing, first of all, that very important hormones are made out of cholesterol. All your sex hormones are made out of cholesterol. And then over on the right-hand side of this chart, all the hormones that we need for dealing with stress. You need vitamin A. So this again shows why vitamin A is so critical for just dealing with the world. If you want the world to come easy and not be a stressful place for you, you need adequate vitamin A in your diet. Then we come to vitamin D. And we have a lot of myths about vitamin D. One is that to get adequate vitamin D, just go out and be in the sun for 10 minutes every day, and that'll give you all the vitamin D that you need. And we now know that that is not correct. To get adequate vitamin D, you need to be outside when the sunlight's directly overhead. And in most parts of the world, that happens in the summer months. Let's say July and August. I'll say in the summer months at noon. And if you go out and sunbathe without any clothes on, that's a great thing to do, but very impractical for most of us. On the screen, we are just one of the very unfortunate modern practices is that we are lathering on the sunscreen on our kids, and they need to be in the sun without the sunscreen on. They need that sun. We've turned something that's very necessary for life into something we're afraid of when we're afraid of the sun. The other myth about vitamin D is that you can't get vitamin D from food. The Vitamin D Council says you can't get vitamin D from food. You have to take a vitamin D pill. So how did our ancestors get vitamin D? Well, they got it from food. The problem with the conventional view is that the foods that give us vitamin D are all the foods they're telling us not to eat. Shellfish, butter, bacon, oily fish, egg yolks, especially from grass-fed animals. All of these are great sources of vitamin D, and these are particularly important foods for growing children. And vitamin D has many roles. It's critical for healthy bones. It's very important for growth, for absorbing all our minerals, muscle tone. And one of the things that we see in these autistic children is very poor muscle tone. And again, what is our digestive tract? It is lined with muscles. It's a whole system of muscles that moves our food through the digestive tract. One of the things we're seeing in these children with behavior problems is a lot of gag reflex, difficulty swallowing, and vitamin D. Are they getting enough B12 for those muscles to work? We need vitamin D for healthy skin. And again, I can't stress enough, the gut is skin. It's a lining, just like the skin on the outside. We need vitamin D for the immune system. It is critical for a healthy nervous system. and for producing feel-good chemicals. And probably heard from Dr. Natasha about how a poor gut flora can lead to the production of some really awful poisons that poison the nervous system. But when a body is healthy and has adequate vitamin D plus a lot of other things, the body actually produces feel-good chemicals. It produces exactly the same kind of chemicals that are in opium and marijuana. And the natural state of the body is to be shall we say, so where do we get these vitamins in our diet? In the foods we're being told not to eat. We get it from butter, egg yolks, cheese, cream, grass-fed dairy products, grass-fed animal products. Children have a diet very rich in these foods. One of the things my daughter makes for her children is custard made with cream and egg yolks. And they can have that custard whenever they want. She knows she's giving them a healthy treat. You see the bottle of cod liver oil there. These kids need their cod liver oil. They need that A and D. You know, up until the Second World War, every child practically in the world important to get A and D into these children. Fairly deficient in Western diet. Also, liver organ meats, as in sausage, pate, liverwurst, and scrapple. I say this is a way of making offal taste good. And we definitely need to get these in our diets. We recommend as the first two weaning foods for babies is egg yolks and a little liver puree, chicken liver puree, to get them the A and D, and also all the wonderful other vitamins and minerals that come in these foods. Now, this is going to shock you. We need to go back and cook in lard. Lard is the best dietary source of vitamin D. It is an extremely healthy, stable fat. The vegetable oil industry has spent the last 100 years making us think it is vulgar to cook in I love this old ad, lard. They're happy because they eat lard. And this is absolutely true because the vitamin D in lard helps the body make neurochemicals that protect against depression, that protect against behavior problems and learning problems. Now, there's a third fat-soluble vitamin that I would like to talk about. It's actually discovered by Dr. Price. He called it Activator X. But we now know that this is vitamin K2, which again we get from certain animal products, from the fats and organ meats of animals eating green grass. It's a critical vitamin for growth, and a sign of deficiency in the womb in the growth years is underdevelopment of the middle third of the face, a narrow face, crowded. Protects against calcification, inflammation of the arteries. But what we're most interested in here is that vitamin K is critical for the synthesis of myelin sheath in the brain and the nervous system, and it supports learning capacity. It's also vital for normal reproduction. These three vitamins work together synergistically. Vitamins A and D tell the cells to make certain proteins, and vitamin K activates these proteins after signaling by A and D. We need these three vitamins together, and that's why we should get them from food and not from isolated vitamins. We would never tell you to take a vitamin D tablet, for example, or a capsule. You get these from foods altogether. And the sources of vitamin K are very similar to the sources of A and D. Actually, the best source of vitamin K in the Western diet and for children is aged cheese. Fermentation process, and we are in the process of testing natural grass-fed aged cheeses, and they're extremely high in vitamin K, and it's a great food for children. So here we have the sacred cow. man's best friend, and this cow should be outside in the sunlight eating green grass. I like to think of the cow as a step-up transformer of grass and sunlight, creating the vital fat-soluble activators A, D, and K2. The cow does this all day long and spares your body the trouble and the energy of doing this itself. And that's why we eat these wonderful products, butter, cream, liver, meat fats, with gratitude to this wonderful animal. Poultry model, they're moved every day, they're off. And again, this ensures that these critical vitamins are in the yolks of the egg, and the yolk is much more important than the white, especially for the children who have the gut-brain problems. This is the efficient industrial confinement model, very cruel to the animals. It's also cruel to us because by putting these animals inside, we're getting much less of these critical fat-soluble vitamins that we need. And by the way, the picture on the lower left, that's the organic, those are organic turkeys. That's what we call free range or cage free. They are definitely, it's definitely better than the conventional model, but they are inside all the time, not getting green grass and sunlight. Eight times more D and 2 times compared to the supermarket egg. It's really worth it to seek out a farmer where you can get pastured eggs and pay him more for them. We found 10 to 13 times more vitamin A and 3 times more vitamin D in the beautiful yellow grass-fed butter. The butter on the left is some butter I made from cream I bought at the supermarket. You can see it's white, a sign that these cows were inside all their lives. And of course, they add a dye to it to make it look yellow. And we tested pastured lard versus conventional lard. We found 12 times more vitamin D in the lard from pastured animals compared to the conventional. One test found 1,100 international units of D in just 1 tablespoon of grass-fed lard. This is a very important food to get back in. And I can't stress enough the wonderful nutrition that you get from aged raw cheeses from pastured animals. And the critical thing is from pasture and aged, more important even than being raw. It is a complete food. It contains everything that a growing child needs. You could actually live on raw cheese. You wouldn't need anything else. It contains all the minerals, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, all the B vitamins, vitamin C, and the fat-soluble vitamins A and B. And it is really the best source of vitamin K2 in the Western diet. And again, I can't stress enough, vitamin K2 is critical for the development of the myelin sheaths in the brain and nervous system. So, key nutrients for gut and brain development: cod liver, vitamin A and vitamin oats, etc. Again, same food. Vitamin K, again, from the same types of foods. Choline, absolutely critical for development of the brain and nervous system. And this we get from liver and egg yolks, the 2 best sources. These should be the first weaning foods, so baby gets that choline at the very time when he needs it. Baby goes through windows of development where he needs a lot of choline to make these connections. If the choline's not there, the connections are not made. And it's very difficult to go back and make these connections later in life. DHA, very critical for brain development. Again, cod liver oil, but also from liver, butter, and egg yolks, not just from seafood. Zinc, over 100 enzymes depend on zinc. A lot of them have to do with neurological function. And the best source of cholesterol, I just can't say development. The brain is the biggest concentration of cholesterol in the body. And when we tell these women to go on low-fat diets during their pregnancy and while they're nursing, and then we start our children off with rice cereal and squash, they're not getting the cholesterol they need for development. And babies cannot make cholesterol. It is a vital, essential nutrient for them. And another one, arachidonic acid, also very critical for neurological function. This we get from dairy foods, eggs, meat, and organs. I'd like to say one more thing about arachidonic acid. It's a very unsaturated omega-6 fatty acid. Looks like a hairpin here. And it's been demonized, just like the saturated fats. And you should be so thankful that it does, because without inflammation, we would be dead. Without inflammation, a small injury, instead of being just uncomfortable, would be excruciatingly painful. People talk about inflammation as if it was something bad. Inflammation is what happens when our tissues are damaged, and we should be grateful that our body can get inflamed. What we need to figure out is what's causing all the damage, and that's really poor nutrition. So arachidonic acid is key for regulating inflammation, but it has a very important role for gut health. It is critical for tight cell-to-cell junctures. If you want a gut that doesn't leak, you need arachidonic acid. And you see that hairpin shape. If you want to think of that hairpin shape as like a clip that holds your cells together, that we can get arachidonic acid, and that's in the fats and organs of animals. And our bodies don't make it very well, and certainly children and infants don't make it at all. So again, this is why it's so critical when you're preparing for pregnancy, while you're pregnant, while you're nursing, and while your children are growing, that they get this arachidonic acid, animal fats, and organ meats. This is really key to forming a healthy gut. And then saturated fats and cholesterol. I think of these as fundamental nutrients for a healthy gut. Saturated fats give stability to the cell wall, so your cells have good integrity. And cholesterol makes the cell walls waterproof. What I have here is a diagram of the cell membrane. It's the coating around the cell, and it's composed of cells to work properly. Again, the cholesterol is critical for the cell wall. One of the things that I was so thrilled about the first time I heard Natasha speak was her recommendation of cod liver oil. And of course, I was recommending cod liver oil too. And to find someone else out there like me saying our kids need cod liver oil, that was just a wonderful validation for me, especially someone with the kind of training that Dr. Natasha has. So we recommend cod liver oil for all these children. A second product is the high vitamin butter oil, which was developed by Dr. Price. These two in combinations can do some wonderful healing. And the butter oil is expensive, but compared to what, you know, so. And certainly for bringing about healing in a damaged child. I love this old advertisement for cod liver oil. It says, your baby, give him the help he needs to build a well-shaped head, a strong, straight back, sound, even teeth. Daily use is important. We have other ads that talk about how cod liver oil is important for behavior and for learning. So people recognized back before the Second World War just how important cod liver oil was for the growth and development of children. And I love this. This is my 3 grandsons getting their cod liver oil. It's not hard. It comes with a syringe, and they actually grab the syringe and lick it. Eyedropper, just drop little drops slowly under the tongue, and that's a particularly good way for people with children with leaky gut, because they will absorb it right through the skin and under the tongue. So that's another way that you can give cod liver oil. to your child. But this is an extremely important product for them. The fourth principle, all cultures cook some or most of their food. I think it's very important to understand that you need to cook most of the vegetables for children. Certainly the grains, anything with a lot of fiber in it is difficult to digest for humans unless it's cooked. But the other thing is that all of these cultures ate some of their animal foods raw. And one of the most important raw food, in my opinion, for growing. And from this slide, you can see in the upper left a diagram of a typical protein in milk. And proteins in milk are very different from the proteins in meat. The proteins in milk are very fragile and three-dimensional, and they're easily damaged by heat and processing. I don't know if you remember Tinker Toys, but the processing of milk is like bringing your hand down on a bunch of Tinker Toys. They're very fragile, and once they are pasteurized, your body has to mount an immune response to them. It says, I don't recognize this protein. This is a foreign protein, and it has to mount an immune response. And this is why we see pasteurized milk associated with so many problems in our children, allergies, definitely associated with pasteurized milk. One of the most frequent testimonials that we get from parents who just made one change in the diet. They've gone from pasteurized to raw milk. That's all they did. Nothing else changed. And they tell us, we are amazed at the improvement in our children's behavior. So this is, we hear this all the time. So this is a very important step to take if you have a child who really is a handful and needs that improvement in behavior. Beauty of raw milk is that it is completely digestible. The enzymes in raw milk are activated in the digestive tract. Your body, the body of your child, does not have to produce a single enzyme to digest raw milk. All the enzymes are there. It promotes the growth of friendly bacteria. Just raw milk, so you get an energy gain, and of course, every single vitamin and mineral in raw milk has a carrier protein that ensures that it's 100% absorbed. I think this is very important when we're talking about children with a leaky gut. Now, I will say that sometimes that gut has to be healed first before they can handle the raw dairy. But any child who is suffering from gut-brain problems should never be on pasteurized milk. It should only be raw milk. Pasteurized milk is very difficult to digest. The body needs to supply all those enzymes to absorb it. The warped and distorted proteins put additional strain on digestion and the immune system. So it's kind of a net energy loss to drink pasteurized milk. A key component of raw milk is glutathione, which is a key compound for detoxification. Raw milk is a fine food. The glutathione. The glutathione is in the whey protein, but that doesn't mean you should be giving your child whey powder. Only in the undenatured raw state does this glutathione work. And this explains the success of something called the milk cure, where they only consumed raw milk for many weeks, and it was very detoxifying. So raw milk is very important for growing children. It provides calcium for optimal growth, strong bones, strong teeth, highly protective against asthma, allergies, and eczema. We have over 6 studies out of Europe showing the protective role of raw milk for children. It builds the immune system. The glutathione is for protection against toxins and detoxification, and there are specific components. Next principle, very high levels of enzymes and beneficial bacteria in traditional diets. And that's because they were eating foods rich in enzymes, raw dairy products, raw meat and fish. But I'm just going to move down this list to the lacto-fermented foods. Almost all traditional cultures had lacto-fermented foods. It provided a lot of enzymes for digestion. So we think of sauerkraut, for example, or pickles made in the old-fashioned way. But meats can be lacto-fermented, dairy products such as yogurt, fruits, fish, and even beverages can be lacto-fermented. And these are very important in our diets. The other thing that we get from these lacto-fermented foods are beneficial bacteria. And as Natasha has pointed out, we have gone from a view that bacteria make us sick back to life. Bacteria forming a biofilm, protecting our gut, protecting us against absorption of toxins and heavy metals. They say that 90% of our immune system is the beneficial bacteria in our gut. And this is absolutely critical, as you know, for gut health and for brain health. These good bacteria actually produce feel-good chemicals. Here are some of the lacto-fermented condiments from my book, Nourishing Traditions. Sauerkraut, portito, which is South American sauerkraut, different types of relishes and pickles. These are very easy to make, very easy to include in the diet, and children tend to love these foods. They like the taste of sour foods. And then we also have which is easy to make, and in this commercially a very helpful food for repopulating the gut, providing a lot of nutrients, helpful for anemia, and we've had cases of chronic fatigue cleared up with the beet kvass. Sixth principle, grains. Oh, those terrible, nasty grains, right? And yet many traditional cultures thrived on grains. But that's because they were very careful about how they prepared them. Grains are the hardest food in our diet to digest. There is no question about that. And so we need to pre-digest these grains by proper preparation. That means soaking, sprouting, fermenting, and naturally leavening, the sourdough process. These are all basically fermentation processes. Anywhere from 2 to 4 stomachs, and at least one of those stomachs act as a holding tank for the fermentation of the grasses and grains. They can't digest them either. These things need to be fermented so they can be assimilated and absorbed. And the human being has a very simple stomach, and we simply have to pre-digest our grains for them to be good for us. I'm going to jump to the slide of the grocery store boxes, slide 63. These are cereals that have been extruded. These are extremely hard to digest for children. And actually, the extrusion process creates a lot of neurotoxin. Leslie, I see I don't have much time, so I'm going to skip to slide 73. In traditional diets, only natural fats, no industrial fats and oils. Slide 74. I can't stress enough how important saturated fats are for everything that happens in our body, everything from healthy cell membranes to supporting the body's detoxification processes. These are what I call the 5 angelic fats. These are what should be in your kitchen: butter, lard for cooking, olive oil for salad dressings, cod liver oil for A&D, and coconut oil for gut health. So this is where you start, by getting rid of all the devilish fats, all the bad fats, and use only those 5 angelic fats. All traditional diet. Salt is essential For digestion, I can't stress that enough. These children need lots of salt. They need salt for carbohydrate digestion, and they need salt for protein digestion. Ninth principle, and you heard about this from Dr. Natasha, traditional cultures use bones, usually as bone broth. Many important roles of bone broth: helps with digestion, heals the digestive tract, and a very interesting role of glycine in the bone broth is that it regulates dopamine levels for mental and emotional health. You have a hyperactive child, give him a big cup of broth in the morning, and that will help settle him down. Beware of foods that taste like broth, that have that meat-like taste. That comes through the roof. Leslie, I'm going to slide 82. Solution to fatigue, but maybe I should say solution to behavior problems, solution to gut health, is easy digestion, making your foods easy to digest, choosing foods that are easy to digest. So that means raw dairy, not pasteurized, proper preparation of grains, lacto-fermented foods rich in enzymes and beneficial bacteria, and the gelatin-rich bone broth. So all of these are ways of making our food easier to digest. Please get familiar with the Weston A. Price Foundation website. We'd love to have you as members. Flyers. We're very proud that we were the first organization. We were the first organization to publish information from Dr. Natasha about the GAPS diet. We have a great little booklet, Healthy for Life, about a 9th grade reading level with our 4 food groups and our dietary guidelines and simple recipes. Very colorful book. And then I'll just do a little plug for my book, my new book, the Nourishing Traditions Book of Baby and Child Care. And we spend a lot of time talking about the kind of diet that produces the optimally healthy child. Leslie didn't give me much time, so I have a DVD with a 5-hour version of the seminar. That cholesterol is bad, saturated fat is bad. You need to listen to this DVD. So thank you very much. I don't know whether you could hear me or not. I can't hear you or see you. I couldn't see the slides, but hopefully it all worked. And this is definitely an experience for me. Thank you very much for listening.